Darrell Zeller. How he chose this topic, I'll never know. Act your age, Darrell Zeller, speaker number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever been told to act your age?
Yes.
Or have you told somebody else to act their age?
Yes.
Well, over the years, there are many, many times, thousands of times actually, when I've been told to act my age, and normally it is by a family member. Well, I did not know how to act my age, what age I'm supposed to be acting at. So I went to the internet. And we all know that the internet contains all the information there is, and everything on it is true, right?
Yeah, everything.
Well, when I went to find out acting your age, I saw many different items on that, descriptions, how you should act. The one I thought that was most appropriate was, you should act in a manner that is appropriate for someone of your age. Boy, that didn't help me at all. But since most of the time when I was told to act my age, my family members were saying, grow up, get mature. So I said, okay, are there any indications of people not acting their age? And sure enough, HuffPost turned around and had on there 10 different responses of people not acting their age. 9 of those responses came from women. The one response that came from a man was that people of 30 years and older were addressing their friends inappropriately. For example, women over 30 were saying to their friends, way to go, girl, that's it, girl, way to go. And he said that that is not just for women, that's men do it also. On the women's responses, 6 of them were talking about the attire and makeup for women. They didn't say anything about men, for women. One of them talked about the fact that some women would drink excessively to the point where they really were not able to be standing straight at all. She didn't say anything about men. And then one of them turned around and said, one of the issues that she saw were people over 80 who dyed their hair. Because black hair just did not go with the wrinkles. And then the one lady turned around and said she did not think that it was appropriate for men to have ponytails. I wonder what she'd say about the male buns. I don't know. But this is what they were talking about younger. Not acting your age because you acted too young. So what about the rest of them? Well, let's face it, we have 3 ages. Our chronological age, our physical age, and our mental age. We can't do anything about a chronological age. There was a gentleman last year who applied to have his age changed from 69 to 49 because he was having trouble getting dates with women in the 40s. He was denied due to the legal ramifications. But then we have the physical part. Now, we have people who definitely probably do not act their age. For example, in our audience here today, we have a gentleman, I'm not going to mention Tom's name, who's approaching his 80th birthday, and he is still out there playing softball. Now, is that something that somebody in his late 70s should be doing?
Yes.
I agree with you, it is. But what about in the newspaper this last week? There was this lady who took up running while she was in her 80s. And she is today running races at 103 years of age. Of course, her running is not exactly what you would see at the Olympics, but it's something that's keeping her healthy, keeping her going, keeping her young. And speaking about keeping young, it is good for us to really try to be as young as we can, because we're in a youth-oriented culture. But how do you keep young? Most of the studies will tell you that your attitude, what you have up here, is key to keeping you young. If you think you're old, and you think you're decrepit, you are. Your body will soon become decrepit. And you'll have to be out there walking in the walker. Or maybe not even do that, like my sister did. But if you keep your mind active and keep on trying to learn something, keep on reading, keep on doing things, working with people, such as Toastmasters, helping out, volunteering, doing something like this, learning, you will be able to keep young. And according to another item on the internet, there's a large percentage of people over 50 who are starting their own business. Why is that? Because they know they still have something to contribute. They don't want to sit down, vegetate, and literally become a vegetable. So, I'll tell you, I happen to have adopted a philosophy that I paraphrase from advice that I received from Zig Ziglar when I read his book, Over the Top, or See You Over the Top. He said, if you allow somebody's words or actions to control you, you are giving that person authority over your life. But if you turn around and change that, instead of allowing them to control you, but evaluate what they're saying, and dismiss if it doesn't mean anything, you are taking charge of your own life. Now I want to ask you, do you want me to be in charge of your life?
No.
No, I don't think so. And do you want me or somebody else to be in charge? No. There are hundreds of us that would be very happy to take control of your life. But I guarantee you, it would not be for the better. It would be for somebody to make me look better and you look worse. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the decision is yours and yours only. Take control of your own life. Mr. Toastmaster.
I was supposed to say this before he spoke. In my mind, I wanted to say it. He didn't know I was going to say it. Darrell Zeller, the only person in the district chosen as outstanding Toastmaster for the district 3 times. Now, you saw this kind of ominous looking device up here. We are going to really hold you guys to the feet, to the fire, and Marilyn is the person in power. You were told and instructed to speak 5 to 7 minutes, and Darrell stayed within that parameter. Did not speak to the bell. The bell will be at 8 minutes. In other words, you qualify at 7:30. We'll tell you later what your time is. We probably won't even announce it. But if you go to 8 minutes, Marilyn's going to ring that school bell, and we're supposed to all clap so that we can't hear another word that they say. That's the next one. Okay, now, Suzanne, I think I may have gotten your title wrong in the program. Is it See Me, or is it the one that's here? See Me. Okay, because I wrote the wrong title for your speech, and we need to set you up with a microphone, right?
No.
Try without that, sure.
Something's missing.
You can do it without the mic? Or yes or no? But you have to stay in one place, hit them handheld. So what do you want to do?
I don't know if I can stand in one place.
Well,
I can try. Shall I?
Yeah.
try.
Try. I don't know what any gestures or anything.
Yeah, you just.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well,
Everybody's
just
going to listen
make sure you
hard.
project.
Okay. Speaker number 2. Suzanne Allee, one of our newest QSs. And she is speaking on a title called See Me. See Me. Just leaving her office as Division E governor, and she's probably a little taller than she was at the beginning of that.
Just a little bit.
All that big off the shoulder. Suzanne Allee, as all of our speakers tonight are QSs, are qualified speakers. see me. Let's hear it.
Have you ever thought about how you would communicate with someone who happens to be blind? I have. I want you to know there's no secret to communicating with people who are blind. Just like you, we want to be treated like everyone else, with courtesy and respect. So relax, act naturally. Now I'm going to give you a few hot tips that will help make your next communication with someone who is blind easier and more comfortable for both of you. Many people are afraid to say hi to colleagues, friends, and classmates. They may confuse us. Worst case scenario, we may not immediately recognize your voice, but we'll appreciate the gesture. Do you see what I mean? Never use a tone of voice that is condescending or disrespectful. For example, phrases such as, "Oh, you poor dear, you were so very brave." Or qualifying statements such as, "She's pretty for a blind girl." Do you see what I mean? When giving directions, be verbal. Gesturing and pointing have little meaning to people who are blind. Saying that the fourth door on the right when you get off the elevator is much more helpful, providing it's open and we don't run into it. Do you see what I mean? Many people use visual cues for communicating. I don't have that option. So when someone such as myself says to you, "What just happened?" Tell me. Help me feel part of what's going on. Do you see what I mean? Now you may see me having a hard time getting around. And you might think to yourself, "What should I do?" Don't be afraid to ask me. Or I might even ask you. It's jarring when people, you don't know how many times I've been pulled and jarred. And with the You Too movement, this is not good. Allow the blind person to grasp at the crook of your arm, or at the back of your arm here, that sighted guide. I'm doing a very poor example. I want you to know that a little kindness and empathy goes a long way. Hope you remember these 3 tips that will help communication with me and others to be more effective. Help make me be a human. You don't have to walk on eggshells 100% of the time, but be respectful. And when giving directions or verbal cues, be descriptive. Paint a picture for me so I can see that in my mind. That would be so helpful. And if I look like I need help, ask me. And I won't be afraid to ask you if I need help. Now I know that you see what I mean.
The other speaker did not get the cowbell, so that we're doing good so far. Maybe we will really get out here when we're supposed to get out.
Probably not.
Okay, we have had a couple of speakers that for one reason or another could not make it. Just to confuse you, I will go ahead and announce the next speaker, which is the third speaker, as speaker number 4. So that if I told you earlier you were 16 and there's not enough, it works out, you're still 16, it just means that we skipped over a couple people. So it looks like 2 have going to miss. So we will go on to speaker number 4.
I knew that would happen.
Speaker number 4 is a rather special fellow, because speaker number 4 is a QS in 2 different districts, right, Chris? Come on up. Aren't you QS in District 100 and a QS in, by the way, if there's anyone from District 100, I guess they have unofficially made distinguished, so congratulations. Check the staff today and there's 10 members or something, but I guess they're coming in. Okay, speaker number 4. Chris Collins, also a member of my debate club, so I get to argue with him all the time. Introvert versus extrovert, introvert versus extrovert, Chris Collins.
By a show of hands, raise your hand if you're an extrovert. Raise your hand if you're an introvert. And how many people have joined a club like Toastmasters and changed from an introvert to an extrovert? A few of you. Well, after you listen to me for a few minutes, you might want to change the way you think. Because introvert or extrovert is part of your DNA. You cannot change your DNA. A lot of people mix up the term shyness with introvert or extrovert. I'm not shy no more, so now I'm an extrovert. Well, that's not really true. Because we're born that way. And if you're like me, they used to make fun of you. Well, you're shy, so you'll never be a good speaker. You can never be a leader because you're too shy. Well, with time, you can change. And I found that to be true. Because I was put down a lot. And believe it or not, there's actually 30% of the populations tends to be introverts. I started doing some research. And I got happy. My favorite hero of all times was an introvert, Abraham Lincoln. Then I started doing some more research. You realize most of the presidents have all been introverts? Clinton was an extrovert. More than one reason. But then Trump tends to be an omnivert, which means he's kind of halfway in between both. The trouble is, you could put 10 introverts in the same room and they'll all be different. You put 10 extroverts in the same room and they're all different because none of them have the same characteristics. An extrovert can be shy. An introvert can be well-spoken. But then you look at the leaders. George Patton was an introvert. Schwarzkopf was an introvert. Most of our leaders were also introvert. Churchill, even Hitler. So why is there a big difference? And if you think about it, it's not so much the way you act, it's the way you react. An introvert will not speak unless he has something to say. An extrovert likes to speak off the cuff. They just like to get up there and speak. They want to be the center of the party. But I found the biggest difference, especially being a teacher, the first week I'm lecturing like 25 hours. I want to go home and just read a book. Get away from people. I need to recharge my battery. Whereas an extrovert, let's go party! Let's have fun! It's like, no. You want to come out and party? No. I want to go home and rest. Relax. It's kind of like teaching. I think most teachers tend to be introverts because we're all excited Monday and the kids going, oh God, Monday. By Friday, they're wild. Woohoo! And we're going, thank God it's Friday. We're worn out. Middle Wednesday, we tend to match a little bit. But the big thing between introverts and extroverts If you put an extrovert in a room alone, he starts losing energy. Whereas an introvert feels more lively. And you think about it, when you're dead tired and you've given everything, what do you do to recharge your battery? Do you want to be around people? Or do you want to be alone? Extroverts want to reflect with people. Introverts want to reflect on their own. It's like Einstein. He was an introvert. At Caltech, they even put a little hallway underground so people wouldn't bug him. And if you look at most famous people, they said you will not be a leader. It's not so much of that. The problem is most extroverts do not have confidence. They tend to be better leaders, and you see that a lot in Toastmasters. Well, I can never be a governor. I can never be a director. I cannot be a district director. But then after someone comes up to them and says, you can do it, and they have the confidence, they surprise a lot of people because they don't have the confidence. And once you give them the confidence, they excel. And that's the big issue we need, because if you have an introvert in your club, they need the encouragement. They need the help. But they're the biggest people you see that will blossom because now they have the confidence. And that's a big problem we have. Yes, you can change your traits. You can gain confidence, but it still makes you an introvert. And think of it this way. When you are exhausted, where do you go? An introvert, if you put him at a party, even though he's enjoying it and having a great time, internally he's exhausted. And think about your lifestyle. When you're in a room full of people, do you feel drained or do you feel charged? And the funny thing is, people do the reverse things. So an introvert, more people, the happier he is. An extrovert, the opposite. So think about your life, and if you're like me, celebrate being an introvert. Because a lot of great people that are introverts. Mr. Toastmaster.
Now, our next speaker is still on her way, so we are going to skip over speaker number 5 and go to speaker number 6. And one of the most important parts of a speech, they talk about the opening and the closing, but to me one of the most important parts of any speech is the title. Probably, in my mind, half of you probably are here just so you can hear what it is that Dan Schroff is going to talk about in his speech. He's also in my debate club, so he's quite a clever gentleman, but I don't know what in the world he's going to do with the speech titled 10 Goat Wives. 10 Goat Wives, Dan Schroff.
Johnny Oot was one of the best traders in his island chain. In fact, of the almost 100 islands, there was nobody who was a better trader than Johnny Oot. He always got the best deal, and nobody could ever pull one over on Johnny Oot. And he had spent his time on those islands building a trade route among all of the almost 100 islands, but his final goal was to go to the Grand Island where King Mo lived, because he was going to establish trade with King Mo. And finally that day came, and Johnny's canoes started to pull into King Mo's lagoon. And when they did, King Mo's men went up to him and told him, Johnny Oot is here. Now King Mo was looking forward to this, because he also was a really good trader. And he was thought that he could actually outdo Johnny Oot. So he came out onto his front porch, his 2 daughters with him, his twin daughters. Now, they were twins really only in the fact that they were born together. Because the king loved his daughter Lila. She was beautiful, sophisticated, intelligent, spoke eloquently. And then there was the mouse, Anna. Not quite so intelligent, didn't really keep herself up, not exactly beautiful, and she spoke with a really bad stutter. So when the king saw that Johnny was starting to walk up towards them, he turned to Anna and said, "Please go into the kitchen and help them prepare the dinner." And of course, Anna bowed her head and went over to the kitchen door. And as Johnny made it up to the top of the steps, he bowed towards the king. And when he did, he looked over. And his eyes and Anna's eyes met. And she blushed like a little girl and ran inside the door and closed it behind her and put her ear to the door because she wanted to hear what this famous Johnny sounded like. And then King said, "Welcome to my island, Johnny." And Johnny looked up to him and he said, the girl. And King Mo said, "Oh, you want to get right to business? Well, this is my daughter, Lila." And Johnny said, "No, the one that just went into the building. Who is she?" And the king went, and he kind of sighed, knowing he's now going to have to tell Johnny that that also was his daughter. And he said, "That's my other daughter, Anna." And Johnny just looked at him and he said, Is she spoken for? What is her price?" Because on the islands, when a suitor was looking for a wife, they always offered the father a gift. Usually the commoners would give a goat for a wife. If it was one of the princes of one of the islands, possibly 2 goats, because that was the currency of the islands. Now, a king's daughter, she's probably going to get 3 goats. Easily 3. And the king just went, "Don't you mean my daughter Lila here?" And Johnny said, "No, your daughter Anna. I'll give you 5 goats." And the king was rather shocked, and he stepped back and he went, 5 goats? And Johnny said, You're right. That's way too low. I'll give you 7 goats. And of course, Anna is hearing all this through the door, wondering what is going on. But the king, when Johnny said 7 goats, started thinking, Johnny's trying to pull a fast one on me. He's trying to make fun of me. And he got mad and he said, 7 goats? How dare you try and say 7 goats? And Johnny went, I'll give you 10 goats. 10 goats and 10 baskets of fruit. The king said, I'll call your bluff. And Johnny paid the 10 goats. He had his men bring him to the king's corral. He brought in the fruits. And later that day, Johnny and Anna sailed off back towards Johnny's island. Now time passed, and for the first year, the other islanders had a good laugh and a good joke about how the king really stuck it to Johnny. 10 goats for a wife? Nobody in the islands has ever paid more than 3 goats. And they had their laugh. And then a couple years later, the king finally married off his daughter Lila to the slug. And later on, 10 years, another canoe pulled into the king's lagoon. And he handed him an invitation to a banquet in honor of Johnny on his island. And the king accepted, told him how many people would come. And the day of the banquet came, and all of the islanders were there. And finally, Johnny came out, called them all inside, because the king had finally arrived. And when all the rest of the islanders and their families had sat down, the king came in, and a few people clapped and applauded. Yeah, I mean, they liked the king. And the king went up to the head table and sat down where Johnny was with his daughter and the slug and their kids. And then the door in the back opened again. And the most beautiful woman anybody had ever seen walked into the door. And the place went silent. She was radiant. She walked up to the head table and she addressed the king and said, Welcome to Johnny's retirement celebration, King Mo and Lila. And then she turned to the crowd and told them the same. Welcome to Johnny Oot's retirement party. Thank you for coming. And then she turned back around, and the king kind of elbowed Johnny and said, I like who you picked for your master of ceremonies. And that's when Johnny put out his left hand. Gotta learn my left and right. Left hand. She put out her left hand on top of his, and the king noticed matching wedding rings. And that's when the king looked at Johnny, his jaw dropping, and said, "What? What happened?" And the beautiful woman turned to the king and said, "Welcome to the island, father, and sister Lila." And the king is like, "I don't get it. She was a mouse." And Johnny said, "King, when I first saw Anna, I knew that you had twin daughters. I also, as soon as I looked in her eyes, knew which one was the more beautiful. And from that day on, I wanted her to hear that she was a tin goat wife, the first and only one ever on the islands. And she became a tin goat wife. You see, you laughed that I paid 10, but I laughed because I got a bargain. Fellow Toastmasters, when you talk to your spouses and your children, remember that your words are more powerful than anything that you can give them. Your spouses, your children will become exactly what you tell them they are.
Okay. Not what I expected. Very good.
No, is that nice? Yeah.
Okay, now that was officially, according to the document here, speaker number 6. We had skipped over speaker number 5 because she was incommunicado, not able to get here yet, but is on the way. So we will now go on to speaker number 7. Now, speaker number 7 is a person that's also very close to my heart because we've been in the same club, my home club, for years and years and years and years. Also, Club 1348 has the unusual, I don't know, is there any other club that videos every speech at their meeting? 1348, that is the only one I know of that videos every speech, puts them on YouTube, and you can go back and feel badly how the world saw how you did. So anyway, you get a chance to reevaluate by seeing the video of yourself doing that. And they have provided the camera, so we're going to video this, and my dream would be that we video some of our programs so that those people, for one reason or another, can't attend. We'll get a chance to check the video, and maybe they'll know what they missed by not being here. Our speaker number, officially, according to the list here, speaker number 7, Mike Slattery, bucket list. The bucket list, Mike Slattery.
Have you ever been at the bedside of a person who is dying? A friend, a relative, or even a family member. They looked at you and they said, "Mike, I wish I could have worked more." In the 70-plus years that I've been around, and have been in situations such as that, I've never heard that. But what I have heard is people saying, "Gee, I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have had more time to do more. But I never did. I had to work. I had to bring up a family. And I had obligations to do. But I never got the time to get the things done that I wanted to do. I didn't have a bucket list. Or if I did, I was not able to complete it." You know, people that are retired usually go on tours. And those tours can cost anywhere from $10,000 to maybe $20,000, $25,000. And what do you get? You get a week, maybe 2, and if it's a long one, maybe 3. to all kinds of different places. Might be in Asia, might be in South America, might be Africa. It depends on which one you choose. Now you go, and when you get there, you're now on a tour. You get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, eat a quick bite, and then jump onto a bus, and you get to spend at least half an hour at one of the attractions. And you take out your camera, and you take pictures, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And after the tour is over, you come home. And when you get home, you develop your pictures. You see the things that you were able to see. And what do? You call your family. Say, hey, come on over. I'm going to show you my pictures of what I did while I was there. And you share those memories with your family, which we should. But then it's over. A week, 2, maybe 3, and it's all over. That bucket list is only one thing. It's now gone. But if you will take a look right now at a handout that I gave you, it's called SCRT, Senior Citizens Rapid Transit Racing. For those of you who have never been able to get into a race car, or have never raced a car, and have that desire within you, that you want to do that. Now, I'm not talking for you to go to Bob Bondurant's racing school where you're not really racing, all you're doing is driving fast. I'm talking about an ability for you today to join this organization, and they're going to teach you how to drive a race car, how to build a race car, how to fix a race car, how to build an engine. And the beauty of it is that you're not going to be young. You're going to take your life experience with you and bring it to this organization. And you're going to share that with others. Now, perhaps you're thinking that, well, that's a male-dominated endeavor. But it's not. SCRT, the only prerequisite is 65 years old or older. And if you just want to learn, how to maybe, something you never were able to do or even tried to do. Or if you maybe want to learn how to build a motor so that you can hear that vroom, vroom, and know that who's ever behind that wheel, when they go into turn 1 and there's a car right by them, that when they put their foot down, that they're going to go into turn 2 before the person next to them. Oh, what a thrill! It's incredible. Something you'll never forget. It's a memory. And the most important thing is that it doesn't end after 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It goes on for 9 months, maybe 10 months, and if you really love it, it'll go on for a year, then the next year, and the next year. And you still can share that with your family. They will know that you now have been able to fulfill the one dream that you had. And that's the dream, and not a wish. Mr. Toastmaster.
That's not on my my bucket list, but I had to share a quick little story. We met somebody who was a skydiving snob. We've done over 100 skydives, and he made fun of the little fake ones, you know, that you can jump in. He finally went at the one in Paris, and he said that is the closest thing to the real thing. It's pretty safe. So if you don't want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, there's an opportunity for you to try that. Okay, our next qualified speaker who will be speaking is not speaker number 8, but speaker number 9. So speaker number 8 is one of those that is not able to be here. And that is speaker number 9. You'll get back to 6 or whatever. Anyway, speaker number 9. And it's Dominique Fruchtman, one of our district's super expert evaluators. So he's put on instructional things on evaluation. Her title, now this is on video. I'm not sure if you really want to share all the details of the Summer of 69 on video. The Summer of 69 is the title of her speech, Dominique Fruchtman. Yes.
Summer of 69, great summer for me. I was born July 18th, 1963. In 2 weeks or so, I'm going to be 56 years old. Don't do the math. Summer of 69, I was turning 6 years old. Just old enough to be figuring some things out. I remember my first memory when I was about 4.5 years old. I remember taking the holiday photo. That's my earliest memory. Now, having a birthday in the summer meant that I could never have it during the school year, when the rest of the kids all got the attention from the teacher, fellow students. Here's your birthday card. My mom gave me this to give to you. Here's a present. No. Summer birthdays meant you hoped and prayed that your friends stuck around for the summer so they could come to your party. Well, luckily, I had parents that threw me parties. And I remember this was not my first party. This was at least the second party I remembered. My mom said she'd been giving me parties since I was an infant. This just happens to be maybe the second one I recall. Well, my actual birthday was on Friday, July 18th. No Friday party. Nobody goes to party on Friday. So they had it on Sunday. July 20th, 1969. Ring a bell?
Yes.
So yeah, I shared a birthday with Apollo 11. Yay! Yeah. It sucked. It was around noon. They had lit some candles. I was getting ready to blow them out. And everybody went, "It's the Apollo, it's the moon landing, and I went, "Where'd everybody go?" And we had this giant TV, huge black and white TV, and everybody ran over to the TV and crowded in front of it. Adults, children, animals, everybody. And I'm over here by the cakes, watching candles melt, going, what's going on? Nobody stayed behind to explain to me what was going on. Not my mom, not my dad, not my Aunt Harriet. And I was sad and I felt abandoned. And ever since then, I have been, I hope I don't offend anyone, a birthday slut. And what I mean by that is, not a July goes by when everybody doesn't know it's my birthday. Now, you all know, you'll never forget. It's not only my birthday, it's my birthday week. It's my birthday month. My employees know, my friends know. If any random person comes up and goes, "Heard it was your birthday, happy birthday," I go, "Thank you." And I glow. And I absorb it and I need it. the other day. That abandoned little girl at the cake with the melting candles, competing with the flippin' moon landing, is the one who needs all that birthday stuff. Well, I'd had enough. About a month ago, I visited a hypnotist for other reasons. But this bubbled up. And I explained all this to him. Took about an hour. I shortened it. And it's for your benefit, you're welcome. And he said, why don't you rewrite it? Why don't you rewrite your story? And I said, yes, I will do that. And being a Toastmaster, and having written speeches now for going on 10 years, I did it like that. Here's how the memory goes now. I'm blowing out my candles. It's the moon landing! Everybody runs over. Except me, Dominique now. I stay behind. And there's little Dominique. She's over there. And I go over to her, and I stay. And I explain, hey Dom, sorry they split. You know, they don't really, it didn't occur to them to stay behind, but what's happening now, you'll get it in about 50 years, give or take. But trust me, when you ask them what's going on and they said, it's the Apollo, and you said, what's the Apollo? And they go, it's the Apollo. And that wasn't helpful. I'm just explaining, one of these days you'll just be glad you weren't born on 9/11. Okay? It could be worse, is all I'm saying. Sharing a birthday with a big popular event. Well, so there's a little competition, so what? They still love you. They're just being kind of leaving you behind right now. But I love you, and I'm going to keep you company until they come back. I rewrote my script, and now I'm not such a birthday slut. But you do still all know when my birthday is, and I do expect cards and Facebook. So, you got 2 weeks, but this is my birthday month. I challenge everybody in this room to rewrite one of your own scripts, one of your own memories. Take the crappiest one, the one that bugs you the most, rewrite it. Put yourself back in there and make it better. Because I can't tell you how much this helped me. Going back to my little self and keeping myself company. Mr. Toastmaster?
I share a birthday with a holiday too, but it's not quite as upbeat. Mine is December the 7th. Oh. Remember me in a negative fashion. Our next speaker is our resident bagpipe player and recently retired fireman who sorry I have to tell kind of that whatever expense, but anyway, I called 10 people, all I got was message machines. Tim Murray answered his phone. I don't think he is missing out on his bucket list because he answered his phone while he was riding his motorcycle in northern Montana. Which leads us directly, are you ready? Leads us directly to his topic, Stories from the Road. Tim Murray, Stories from the Road. Let's hear it.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I ride motorcycles.
Nice.
In fact, I'm right smack in the middle of one. I flew all the way down from Coeur d'Alene to be here. My motorcycle's still up there. I'm leaving in an hour or two. No, I'm just kidding. In the summer of 2017, I rode for 8 weeks and 3 days, 12,200 miles, up the West Coast and all around the western United States and Canada. It was the trip of a lifetime. My goal was to get some stories on the road.
Mid-July, a beautiful summer day, I was crossing a bridge in northern Michigan. Now, for those of you from this area, do not give this story away, because I had never been to this part of the country. I was crossing this beautiful bridge that was clearly written Mackinac Bridge, but they call Mackinac Bridge. Makes perfect sense to me. The bridge, you could see down through the grates on a motorcycle, and endless sailboats and boats all around. When you come down the other side, you come into this beautiful little tourist town. I'm sure it does well during the winter, but in the summertime it thrives with the tourist trade. It turns out it's the gateway to the recreational area of northern Michigan and Canada. I was looking for stickers. That's my windshield off my motorcycle. You see, each of these stickers represents a person, place, or thing that I liked about that place. And so I sought out a sticker to put on the windshield. I kept it down about that low until I got home because I couldn't see through it. And it generated a lot of conversation. I was looking for a sticker in this small town. Tourist town? This is the type of town where they sell blow-up rubber rafts and beach towels and swimsuits for the kids that swim in Lake Superior. I was looking for the sticker, so the smell of cotton candy, caramel popcorn, and endless amounts of fresh brewed coffee were not going to persuade me differently. I dipped into a little tourist shop. And I, being an expert sticker finder, went straight to the counter. The only person in there was a female clerk. And she was standing on a little stool, stocking the shelf. She didn't even turn around to look at me, but she did say, "Good morning." I saw the stickers and the Mackinac Bridge. I know it says Mackinac, but it's not. And I got the sticker, and I noticed another sticker right next to it. You all see that back there? Can you tell me what that says? It says up. And I said, as I looked at this, "What's up?" Without turning around, she said, "Oh, not much. There's a farmer's market going on down by the harbor, and they sell the most wonderful kettle corn and candy popcorn jams, and a lot of really nice locally made goods. And if you're hungry, there's a lot of nice restaurants down by the harbor. My favorite is Moses Pancake Cafe. And it's really a lot of fun. And I know that our local car club is socially active, is going to be down there also. Does that help?" I went, "Well, it's nice to know, but I'm wondering, what's up?" And she's not turning around, but I think she did this. A little sneak over her shoulder. She says, "Oh, the nightlife is wonderful here too. We have the summer concert series continuing in the amphitheater. And all of the local hotels sponsor this, and I think it's because they want people to stay there, because you see the vineyards also have wine tasting and the breweries have beer tasting. So they all want to stick around. If you want to know more, you can go right across the street to the visitor center and they'll give you more information. Does that help?" I said, "Well, once again, real nice to know. Appreciate it. But I'm referring to this sticker that says up." Not quite that loud to her, because she spun around off her little stool and got right in front of me and looked up, because she was only not quite 5 feet tall. And she says, "That's not up. That's UP." I said, "I have to agree with you. It is UP." "So what is UP?" She says, "It's the opposite of what's above." Or what's below, I'm sorry. UP is the opposite of what is below. I said, "Below what?" And she says, "Below the bridge." And I said, "The Mackinac Bridge?" She says, "Yes." And I said, "What's below the Mackinac Bridge?" She says, "Trolls." Now, I know full well this woman had me by the pinky all the way, and I'm along for the ride. And so I said, "Trolls are below the bridge." She says, "Yes." And I said, "What's above the bridge?" And she said, "Youpers." I said, "Youpers are above the bridge, trolls are below the bridge." "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I got an idea what a troll is, but I have no idea what a youper is. What is it? And she says, a youper is someone who lives in the Upper Peninsula. How many people knew that? I did not know this. And I said, Upper Peninsula, that's it. It's a marketing campaign. And she said, yes. I said, well, that's wonderful and very ingenious. You're capitalizing on something you already have, a name. You know, it's funny, I was below the bridge all day yesterday, and I went into a couple of shops, and not one time did I see a single item that referred to trolls. She said, oh, they don't like being called trolls. I said, of course not. I said, are you a youper? She goes, oh no, I'm a troll, I just work for youpers. This woman sold me 2 stickers, an up hat, an up shirt, and an up shot glass, which I really needed after that conversation. This woman, working in a gift shop, had a message. She told me about her farmer's market. She told me about the vineyards and the breweries. She told me about the social clubs and the concert series. This woman had a message, and she shared it with me. It was one of the most valuable stories I learned on that 12,200-mile ride. And I brought it back to Toastmasters, realizing how many times have you heard stories where somebody took up your 5 to 7 minute time, 7 minutes, 20 seconds, and didn't make their point. Mr. Toastmaster.
Over there, you see whether her hand got there. Hey, go through the whole time without hearing that wonderful sound, but wonderful stories. And now you know why I was so glad that he decided to get back here. Now he's going to leave in a couple of days to go off on some more adventure. One of my goals of having this marathon of speakers is to maybe get a chance to hear from some people that we don't hear too often from. Some of the speakers you will have heard tonight, one of them has a class on Wednesday night and can't be here, and so on and so on. Our next speaker is Grace, and Grace is going to give us a speech entitled, and she's probably more qualified to speak on memories than most of the people in the room, right? Having more accumulated more memories than most. But one memory that I have of her, and I was so glad, seriously, that she decided to agree to come and be a speaker, is she is one of the early Speakers Bureau chairs. So, Grace LeFevre,
It was very late. We'd been traveling all day. Started our journey before the sun was up. And now we crossed the bridge into Temiskaming, Quebec. And we had 12 miles to go to Kippawa, but the road ended. There was no road. So an uncle met us there with a push car. Push car. And he pushed the push car and my mother and I around the lake, and I heard the loons, and I heard the sounds in the woods, and we finally arrived in Kippawa and made our way to Granny's shack, and the door opened, and here is the specter lit by a single coal oil lamp in the room behind her. And my mother said, "Mom, this is Grace." Oh. So this is Grace. Well, this is an awful late hour for this young lady to be up. So now I want you to come around the corner, Grace, I want you to get ready for bed. Now, this is your cousin Shirley. You get into bed with Shirley right now, and I don't want to hear another peep out of you two girls. Well, I got into bed. I'm sure I had a tear. And Shirley reached around and she took my hand. She said, "It's okay, Grace. It's okay." And those two 4-year-old girls bonded for life. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, you're so welcome. Many years passed. Shirley graduated high school in Temiskaming, French-speaking Temiskaming. And she married a fellow by the name of Jerry Barb. And after they were married, they were coming down to meet my parents, Shirley's aunt and uncle, and her cousin Grace. So I waited. I couldn't wait to meet this fellow, Jerry Barb, that Shirley married. And he arrived. He and his bride in a 1958 yellow Pontiac convertible. This guy's an extrovert. Jerry spoke pretty good English, but he was from a French-speaking family. And he, on this trip, was taking his bride down to the beaches of Sarasota, Florida, and then home, where they had purchased a house in Temiskaming across from the church. Now, Jerry's first job was with the provincial fish and game, and he was pretty proud of the government boat that he had on the lake. It was the biggest, baddest, fastest boat. Nobody could get away from Jerry Barb. And one day, he came across a couple of people in a boat fishing, and he went up and he said, "Good morning, bonjour. How are you doing with the fishing?" "Oh, the fishing is great, thank you." "Well, I'd just like to check your license." "We don't have a license." "You have to have a license. You can't fish on this lake without a license." "We have diplomatic immunity. We're from the USSR and connected to McGill University. We don't need a license." Jerry says, "If you're going to fish on this lake, you're going to need a license. Sir, we have privileges that you obviously are not aware of." I'm going to cut my story short. Several years later, Jerry was in Germany with the forestry department, and he heard that the Russian government had opened their borders to Canadian citizens. He was so close. He said, "I can't go home without getting my passport stamped from Russia." He made some phone calls, he found out he could go, and he boarded a small plane to Moscow. The man he sat beside didn't say much to him until he said something like, "Bonjour." "Bonjour, monsieur. Parlez-vous français?" "Oui, little." "Where are you from, Jerry?" He said, "Oh, I'm from small town in Kippawa." Not Kippawa, Temiskaming, Quebec. He said, "Isn't that unusual? I have been to that town, Temiskaming? No. How can that be? That can't be. You've been to Temiskaming? That small town? He said, well, there was an incident happened when I was there that you might have heard of. There was a young girl jumped off the bridge into the Ottawa River. And there was a man walking on the bridge that evening, and he saw this happen, and he jumped in after her and was able to get her through the currents and to shore. Jerry said, I remember that incident very well. The man said, well, I was the man on the bridge. Jerry said, the woman whose life you saved was my sister. Mr. Toastmaster.
Too long to hear from you.
Yeah.
Okay, we go on to speaker number 12. Speaker number 12 is one of the hardest working qualified speakers that we have in the district because he has been responsible for coaching more of our qualified speakers to get to qualified. Each person who wishes to become qualified has to have an official QS as their coach. Randy Powell has coached more successful speakers to become qualified speakers than I think anybody else. And he will be speaking, You're in the Way. You're in the Way. Randy Powell.
So how's everybody doing? Great. That's great. You had a good week?
Yes.
Okay, this is not my forte. I'm not accustomed to having a conversation with people in 7 minutes. My shortest talk is 20 minutes. My longest is an hour. So bear with me, because I'm not going to let that clock beat me. But I have a question for you as we get started here. And it's an important question. If I was to ask you, each and every one of you in a private conversation across the other table, what's your greatest challenge? Or if I was to ask you, what is it that you would like to accomplish in life? What would you say? Now, I hope each and every one of you are having that conversation right now, trying to answer that question. Now, I ask that question often when I'm in conversation with clients. And one of the things that I've found out over the last 6 years is that oftentimes when you ask that question, you get the deer in the headlights. Or what I get is a conversation that has something to do with someone else. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. But what I never, ever hear is that maybe I'm not where I want to be because I'm in the way. Now, I have coached individuals who work for organizations, and they're always talking about somebody at the company is in the way. Leaders have people that are in their way. That's why the organization isn't progressing. That's why they're not hitting their target. But the same leader has not asked the question or even thought that maybe they're in the way. So I'd like to ask you this. If you're not where you want to be at this exact moment in life, if you've got something on the table that you haven't accomplished just yet, it may not be someone else. It just may be us. I'm going to share a story with you to kind of bring this to the front seat here. It's often important to talk about yourself and be honest with yourself first so that you can share and others get where you're coming from. A few years ago, I got a phone call from a friend. I consider him a friend. And some of you, many of you may know this individual, so I'll mention his name later. And he said, hey, I got an invitation for you. Why don't you come to this mastermind? Now, I had been speaking, and you know, sometimes when you're doing something and you're going after and you're trying to live full out and live your purpose, other people think you're further ahead than you really are. And oftentimes you want people to think you're further ahead than you really are, if you want to be honest. And sometimes people thought I, a few years ago, was further ahead, and I'm looking at other people thinking they're further ahead. So I get this invitation to this mastermind, and this particular location that we were at, when I got there and the pearly gates opened up, I was overwhelmed. Because this is the same location where Tiger Woods and some of those other Justin Timberlake, all those people that you put on pedestals, that I would put on pedestals, even though they put their pants on like I do, I hold them here. And we all are guilty of that, aren't we? So I get there and I drive through the pearly gates, and it's a golf classic, beautiful course. I'm dressed to the nines, tie, three-piece suit, and I get up there, and guess what? Every single person in there, some of them had golf shoes on with their feet up on the conference table. And I'm thinking, what the heck? So I unbutton my shirt, trying to be cool like them, and I sit down at this table. Now, as I'm sitting at the table, something weird happens. They do this thing called the hot seat. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a hot seat before. I have, but it was because of a spanking. This particular hot seat, I'm a guest. They invited me. I'm not part of the mastermind. So I'm sitting there thinking I'm going to learn a lot of stuff. And I learned some things about other people who I held in high regard, putting them on a pedestal, as we're all guilty of. And as it came around the table, I thought they were going to skip me and go to the next person, which was the person that invited me. And I said, and they said, well, Randy. I said, what? They said, well, what are you challenged with? What's your big thing? What do you have? And I'm like, on the hot seat. And so I began to explain what I could, because I wasn't expecting it. And the next person who invited me said something special to me. He said, you just need to get out of your own way. For 2 years after I left there, I'm trying to figure this out. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. Have you ever had anyone tell you you just need to get out of your own way? I had an epiphany one day. This same gentleman never clarified it for me. Good friend to this day. And so one day I figured it out. I said, I get it. He's saying I'm the problem. And I've got to act. So I'm going to leave you with 3 things. They're simple as hell, but since I learned that trick, things have skyrocketed for me. I'm hanging out with people, and I'm not holding them in high regard. We're holding each other in high regard. Simple. 3 Ds. Do. Get clarity. Do get clarity down to laser specific. You've heard Patricia Fripp say, specificity. Do it. If you're looking to accomplish anything, get laser specific. Do that. Second, do. Do anything that it takes that's responsible in a responsible manner. In other words, you got to act. The third, do. Don't ever. I know we have hard times and we get sidetracked and we want to quit. If you're doing something special, it's going to be tough. Don't ever, ever quit on yourself. Mr. Toastmaster.
Okay, I know you just thought you listened to speaker number 12, but our next speaker is Speaker number 5 had a hard time getting here, and she's one of the reasons that I kind of designed the program around it was because she is one who has not been able to be here because so many of you might not have met her. She has a class on Wednesday night, just like Darrell has a club on Wednesday night and can't be here often. Our next speaker will be speaking is Melinda Muganzo. Her topic is, what is the soul of you? What is the soul of you? Melinda Muganzo.
Fellow Toastmasters, good evening.
Good evening.
What is the soul of you? Are you ready? Yes. Are you ready? Say yes. Yes. All right, what is the soul of you? S. S. Are you a synergistic stimulator? Synergistic stimulator. When you walk in a room, can you change it? When you talk to someone, can you stimulate their brain? When you're talking to somebody, what's happening to that person when you're in a communication process with that individual? That requires synergistic stimulation. It's a one-time shot. You go for the net, don't miss. Go for the juggler, don't miss. Make sure you don't miss, because what's going to happen after that? All right, synergistic stimulation. When you think about the word S in synergistic stimulation, you have to think about how you can change that person's aura or their demeanor. Something about you can communicate to that person what needs to happen. So think about that. I'm going to move on to the letter O. Are you an optimistic operator? What's the word? 2 words, come on. Optimistic operator. How do you do that? Because it's a one-time shot in the communication process. When you're talking to that individual, what's going to happen? You have to think about that memory. Do you realize that you have 3 types of memory? How many types? Come on, team.
3.
3 types of memory. The first one is your sensory memory. What is it? Come on, team.
Sensory.
That means when you see someone, oh, he looks delicious. Hallelujah. Oh, she is gorgeous. So now they have passed your sensory memory test. If they pass your sensory memory test, they get to elevate to your short-term memory. The second type of memory, which is what? Short-term. That short-term memory is only 2 minutes. How many minutes?
2 minutes.
Oh my goodness, what can you do in 2 minutes? Think about it. Your brain can only absorb 5 to 7 pieces of information in 2 minutes. You ever meet someone and they're talking too much? For too long? You wish they would stop talking? Hello. That means your short-term memory is already on overload. Hello. Okay? So you have your sensory memory, you have your short-term memory, and then you want to go for the juggler, which is the long-term memory. Third kind is what? Come on?
The long-term.
In order for someone to enter into and qualify to enter into your long-term memory, guess what? You have to spend at least 15 minutes. What time frame? Come on.
15 minutes.
15 minutes with that person, and guess what? They get to go into your subconscious. Oh my gosh. You will remember that person when you don't want to remember that person. So you have to be very strategic about who goes back there. Are you qualified to go back there?
Yes.
So you have to think about how you can be optimistic as an operator because your memory is being impacted through the communication process. S was what? Come on.
Sensory.
Okay, S was synergistic stimulator. Come on, walk with me. O is optimistic operator. Now you, oh my goodness, what is unique about you? Are you unique? I want you to be undeniable and unique. What are the words? Come on. Undeniable and unique. That's important. Because when you only have that one-time shot to make that impression, you have to think about what are the long-term effects from that communication process with that person. I want to be memorable. I want to be able to wow the person I'm spending that time frame. Doesn't that make sense? Mm-hmm. How can you wow that person? W-O-W. W is warmth. What is W? Come on.
Warmth.
Do they feel the love when they talk to you? When they spend time in your presence, do they feel that W, the warmth? O is the opportunity. What is O? Come on, team. It's a one-time opportunity. So when you're talking to that individual, it's an opportunity. And then the last W is worthwhile. What's W?
Is it worthwhile?
So you have to be able to wow the person that you're spending time in that communication process. You want to be undeniable and unique. So what is it about the soul of you that is undeniable and unique? And then the letter L. Are you a liberated leader? Hello. Say the words. Come on.
Liberated
leader. Are you free in your spirit? spirit, or do you walk in bondage? You know, some people are in a tunnel vision and they stay there and they never change, right? They don't understand the what ifs all around them that can happen to them. They're stuck in this tunnel and they never get out. Even when you're talking to them, you might be sharing information that they could possibly need. They still do not think about how that information can help them grow. So you have to think about that. Are you liberated and free in your spirit where you can make a difference in the soul of that person? So I ask you again the question, what is the soul of you? S is what you are, a synergistic, come on, stimulator. O is you are an optimistic operator. U is you're undeniable and unique. And the L is you are a liberated leader. What is the soul of you? And when you think about the opportunities that you get in life, which sometimes only come up one time, it's a one-time shot to make a difference. So take advantage of that difference and be the soul of that person. So when you walk away from them, they can say, wow, I will not forget that person because the soul of that person has given me something to think about. Fellow Toastmasters.
You will be memorable. Good job. Good job. You won't forget you. Okay. But you got to come back more often. Okay? Now, you just heard speaker number 5. To keep you confused, we're going now on to speaker number, where am I here? Speaker number 13. And that's Gaynell. So Gaynell, you want to start maneuvering your way on up here. Interesting thing about Gaynell is that my wife's club has a brand new, really wet behind the ears, student of hers from California, Cal Baptist University, and so he just talked her up, and so he said we have to make sure we talk to her. She is a professor of, let's see if I got it right now, communication and leadership at California Baptist University, and she will share with us something we probably most of us need to learn more about. Millennials, a new narrative. Millennials, a new narrative in our
How many of you have heard of these individuals called millennials? How many of you have seen these individuals? How many of you have some of them still sitting on your couch? I would like you to hold for a moment, please, the common narrative around millennials. Don't share. Just marinate on that thought for a moment. What is the common narrative around millennials? The views that we hold of other people impact the way in which we interact with those individuals, which also influences the performance that they deliver in the workplace. In 1968, 2 scientists conducted a study, teachers and students. They informed the teachers that the students had been pre-tested and pre-selected for classroom A and classroom B. The students in classroom A were identified as high achievers. At the end of the semester, the students were tested. And as expected, the students in classroom A scored higher than the students in classroom B. You would think that's just what the scientists were looking for, but it wasn't. The students had not been pre-tested, neither were they pre-selected. They were selected at random for classroom A and classroom B. The difference was in the teachers. The view that the teachers held of these students being high achievers influenced considerably the way the students were interacted and engaged. The teachers spent more time with them. They gave them more positive feedback. They accepted the fact that these students needed to develop and grow and gave them the room to do so. As leaders, we know the world is changing, and it's changing fast. Technology has accelerated that change and that growth. As leaders, in order to sustain your business, you need individuals at every level who are creative, innovative, and relational. How do we get there from here? Take that image, bring it back into mind. If you buy into that narrative, will you create a positive interaction or a negative interaction? Will you influence a positive income or a negative income? What would be the impact of your thoughts? Recently, I've taken up photography as a hobby. And one day I decided to venture out over to Chino's Hills and take my camera in hand, and I was ready. I was going to take pictures of anything in sight. Now, as an amateur photographer, I knew that there would be some photos that would not make it through the grade. But that's okay. I take my photos. I have to run home, get them on my computer to see what is it that I have? What can I share with my family? Sure enough, I pull up a photo, and all I see is a dark hue. Now, I know I took a picture of something on that day. Right now, I don't know what that something is. So where does it go? It ends up in my electronic trash can on my computer. It's of no use to me. I don't even know what it is. 3 days later, I run into an application that will allow me to photo enhance images after the fact. Immediately, my level of curiosity goes up. I'm already thinking, what is it that I threw away? I spent hours out there in Chino's Hills. What did I throw away? I pull that application up, I pull that image up, I bring it into view, bring it into this little adjuster, and I start adjusting the cues. And within seconds, I can start to see what was behind those images. The most beautiful picture on the entire disc. Beautiful clear sky, blue. Puffy white clouds, spaced out, just perfectly. Yellow flowers lining the rolling hills and leading me down a narrow pathway to explore even more. This image reminds me of what I see on a regular basis in the classroom. I see young individuals who come in, who fit into this millennial group, who have bought into the common narrative that they are of no use, that they're too busy on their phones, they're totally disconnected from reality, and we don't know what to do with them. I encourage you to think of it in a different way. What if we took the time to be creative and curious and walk behind that dark hue to discover what's there? What if I sat down for a moment and created dialogue? What if I found out what you're passionate about? What if I discovered that you not only work with children younger than you, and you feed into them, but you travel across the globe and do the same in third world countries? What if I found out that you are far more interested in establishing a place in society where we can all thrive than in making money? What if? And what if we just accept the fact that maybe they'll be on your couch a little bit longer? As a leader, I would encourage you to do 3 things. 1, remember, we are all creative, we're all visionary, and we are all relational. How do we create a new narrative? I encourage you to do 3 things. 1, look at your emotional instinct. The first emotion you get about this particular group, ignore it. Go for the second one. 2, rely on logic. For example, I don't know about you, I'm a little bit closer to collecting that Social Security check. And somewhere down the line, I remember this phrase, something about don't bite the hand that feeds you. Yeah, that check I'm collecting is not coming from my income. So logically, perhaps I want to help him succeed. However, those 2 really won't cut it in and of themselves. The one that you have to rely on is your value. What are your values? What are your values about mankind? What are your values about society? What are your values about what you want to give back, regardless to where you are today in life? Let's take your values and the values of the millennials and let's bring them together, because now is the time for a new narrative.
Editorial. I'm so proud of each and every one of our qualified speakers in this district. There are no two the same. They each bring their own special talent and skills, and that's exactly what the Speakers Bureau should be. So thank you again, Gaynell. I'm sorry you can't be more often. Okay, we go to speaker number 14. Now, Sara comes from a long ways because she has to come all the way in from the desert, so she's not been able to come too often in the last year. But you have the toughest job of all the speech titles that I read here. You have the toughest job of giving a speech of anybody that is speaking tonight, because no one probably wants to take free advice. Free advice for a topic. Sara Cardella.
Thank you.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, I know that you all would like some free advice, and so I'm going to attempt to give you some today. In the professional world that I live in, we have many, many discussions about what is a mentor and what is a coach. And let me tell you, everybody has a different opinion. And no matter what you think, no matter what you declare, it doesn't matter, because you still believe that the mentor-coach job is to give advice, right? And the mentee's job is to listen. And so you think that the mentor, coach, know better than you do, so you listen to them. Always, right? Oh, you're not believing me yet. Okay. Well, I did some research on giving advice, and I ran into Charles E. McKenzie. He is a U.S. representative from Louisiana in 1915. And he looked at advice 3 different ways. The first way is free advice. The second way is how is the advice like a mushroom. And the third way is what do you do when you ignore advice? Being that Mr. McKenzie is from Louisiana, and I have a quote from him, he probably sounded like this: free advice is way overpriced. Okay, so when have you taken free advice? Anybody ever heard of grandma advice? This is when the person gives you advice that you didn't ask for. That's grandma advice. So, when I was in my 20s and young and sexy and thin and all this stuff, I met a gentleman who was tall, dark, and handsome. In fact, he was movie star handsome. So I brought him to a family reunion one day, and we got there. We're at the, not the reunion, but just a family event. We are there, and all of a sudden my arm gets pulled, and my brother says, in a whisper, loud enough for everybody in the room to hear, Sara, Sara, he's not the marrying kind. He's too handsome. What? I just wanted to have a little fun. I wasn't worried about marriage. Mr. McKenzie also tells us that advice is like a mushroom. The wrong kind can prove fatal. So when you think about this, have you ever taken mushroom advice from anybody? Like maybe you wanted to buy a car and your best friend told you, hey, this is the car to buy. And you buy it and it's a lemon. That would be mushroom advice. In my world, I was offered the HR director position at Eagle Mountain Casino in Porterville, California, a Native American casino. I was so excited and terrified. And I was very hesitant. So I called my coach, I called my mentor, I called relatives, I called everybody I could. They all said to me, Sara, this is perfect. This is the next step in your career. Well, it was the most miserable 14 months of my life. I went from the most positive job in the world, a corporate trainer, to the most miserable job in the world, firing people. This was not me. So Mr. Mackenzie also started to think about advice, and he decided this. Advice is a pleasure to give. It is humiliating to need it. But it's normal to ignore it. So have you ever ignored somebody's advice? Is there anything that you can say, like maybe that person, you should have listened to them? Then you've ignored advice. In my world, it was 1992. I had just finished all my courses for my master's degree, and my girlfriend and I decided, we were exhausted, and we were going to take a month off and go to Alaska. And so we did, only we were camping. Well, this then presented a problem. Camping, there's not much water, and I have this stringy, yucky hair that just isn't going to do anything. And I didn't want to get it cut like a boy for a month and walk around, so I said I'm going to get a permanent. Everybody went, no, don't get a permanent. Well, I used to be a hairdresser, and I can tell you I know how to give permanents that are just soft waves. That's all. And so I went and had the permanent, and it came out like a nice, soft afro. To this day, I will not show anybody a picture of me from that trip. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably thinking, I'm going to tell you don't take advice or anything like that. I know I'm not. I'm going to tell you, please, take advice, because it's just a person's opinion. Now, notice I said opinion. It is not free advice, it's not mushroom advice, and it's not ignored advice. It's just an opinion. To listen to an opinion is very wise. To not listen is foolish. And the person who told me this was Bruce Lee, the great martial arts person, who said, a wise man can get more from a foolish question than a fool can from a wise answer. Mr. Toastmaster.
By golly, if I'm paying somebody to give me the world championship, they better tell me something I don't know. We'll go with that. Okay. Our next speaker is someone who was a successful area governor, division governor, district governor, very successful district governor, went on to become international director. The only person I know with 8 DTMs and an excellent debater, and that's all I'm going to say, otherwise this hat won't fit anymore. Richard Snyder, opportunity knock, opportunity knock, Richard Snyder.
Who's there?
Who's there? Opportunity.
Yeah.
Opportunity? What do you want? Get out of here! Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, what do you do when opportunity knocks? Do you run and hide? Or do you throw open the door and embrace opportunity? I hope after my speech today, you do the latter. Studies show that most people run from opportunity when opportunity knocks because they're afraid of the big C. Please raise your hand if you're married. Fair amount of you. You who raised your hand You know what the big C is. My wife, over 20 years, said if you're not committed after 20 years of marriage, you should be. The big C is commitment. We're afraid of committing. What happens if I fail? I don't know if I can. We're so afraid of committing that we're missing out on opportunities for better jobs, promotions, relationships. I have to admit, I used to be a runner. I would hear opportunity and I would run the opposite way. It all started many, many years ago. My mother would yell, "Children, I have an opportunity. Let's have a party." My brothers and I would come running like little puppy dogs. Today's opportunity is, we're going to clean the house. We're going to have a house cleaning party. And I learned that opportunity is a code word for an ugly 4-letter word. W-O-R-K. And so an opportunity, I ran. Until one day I had one of those life-changing events. It was 1980 and I was okay. I was a sophomore in high school. And like many teenagers, I discovered the opposite sex. One girl in particular. Her name was Terry. She had long brown hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Big, large, mysterious brown eyes. An infectious smile. Terry was gifted musically. Her first year in high school, she played first chair flute. I played clarinet in the second row. Only I was on the other end of the spectrum. But every quarter we had an audition. And through practice, I moved closer and closer and closer. And by the beginning of my second year in high school, I was second chair clarinetist. This was the perfect spot in the band for me. Terry was just to my right. In math class, our roles were just reversed. You see, Terry had a figure that turned heads, but she did not have a head for figures. Many times I would hear her say, "Richard, what'd you get for number 3? I don't get number 8. We would meet during lunch, before and after, to prepare for a quiz or test that day. Things were going pretty well. I liked Terry, and I could see some signs that she liked me. Like when she'd take out her pen and give me a pen massage in math class. It sent shivers down my spine. One day, during one of our math training cramming sessions, she suddenly asked me, "Richard, did you know that Saturday is Sadie Hawkins Day?" "Yeah, so?" "That's the day the girl gets to ask the guy out." This is sounding pretty good. "Will you take me to the Sadie Hawkins dance Saturday night?" Suddenly my mind went back to dancing lessons in the living room with my mother. Ouch! And before I knew it, I blurted out, "I can't dance!" Well, Terry and I slowly drifted apart after that. And several years later, when I moved out of state to pursue a higher degree, I thought it was over. But a few years after that, after graduating, I returned to Iowa, and Terry was one of the first person I called. After all, I had dancing lessons in college. Hi, may I please speak with Terry? Who's this? This is Richard Snyder, a former classmate. Terry was killed in an automobile accident in February. Door of opportunity slammed shut. I learned something that day. Life doesn't always give us a second chance. So we better say yes to opportunity. And a few years later, another cute brunette and I our paths crossed. And she asked me if I dance. I said, I do now. Some 20 years later, I'm proud to say, we're still married, and she's the mother of my 2 children. So say yes to opportunity. Great things happen when you say yes. What are you going to do? Mr. Toastmaster.
Took that opportunity to try to become qualified to do that. Hopefully there'll be some more in the audience out there. Now we're almost there, but I don't want anybody to think about leaving because we have 2 really outstanding speakers about ready to speak. The first one, and Manuel may not even know the story here because when I was district governor, I knew how good Manuel was and how good that particular speech was. I asked him to open TLI, the opening to officers training, and to be the very first person to speak at 8 o'clock in the morning. And the biggest reason I did that is I wanted people to hear later about how good he was and to be disappointed that they missed his speech. So next time they might not be late to TLI. Anyway, our next speaker, Manuel Urrizola, a librarian at University of California, Riverside, and the only thing I have to say, 8-time district contest winner, Manuel Urrizola.
A cool spring day, 1967. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and I are marching hand in hand for peace and freedom. Mr. Jameson, ladies and gentlemen, from Central Park to the United Nations Plaza, Dr. King and I are marching hand in hand. Well, not quite hand in hand. For you see, Dr. King was at the head of the march, leading the march, and I was way at the rear, bringing up the rear. And between me and Dr. King were 500,000 other marchers. We shall overcome. Atop the podium, Dr. King is delivering a speech as only he can. Easy with eloquence, surging with power, percolating with hope. I am listening to this great man speak. What makes Dr. King a great leader? Is it his experiences growing up in a segregated South, fighting for civil rights, practicing nonviolent disobedience, getting jailed so that we could all vote? Or is it his education? 3 degrees, including a doctorate from Boston University. Or is it his achievements? Founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, organizer of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, recipient of the Nobel Prize for Peace. All of these are factors. But what truly makes Dr. King a great leader is his ability to communicate with people, powerful and powerless. I am listening to a man who is not the president. He is not a prime minister. He is neither prince nor pope. And yet, he is the greatest leader of his time. Leadership, communication go hand in hand. No one proves that more than Dr. King. As Dr. King is concluding his speech, I, a skinny teenage college student about to enlist in the Navy, I worm my way through that massive crowd, trying to get close to this man of destiny. At the side of the podium is a long line of dignitaries waiting to shake Dr. King's hand. Somehow, I managed to wedge my way between two of these dignitaries. I am scared. When Dr. King gets to me, he sees my outstretched, trembling hand, and he takes it into his firm grasp, hand in hand. On a cool spring day in 1967, I am standing hand in hand with the man who has a dream, the man who has been to the mountaintop, seen the promised land. He will not get to the promised land, but his people will, you and me, thanks to the leadership and the words of Dr. King. I have no photos of that brief encounter with Dr. King, but I have something better. I have my memories of a cool spring day, 1967, when Dr. King inspired me to strive to become a more effective leader by first becoming a more effective speaker. Hand in hand. Fellow Toastmasters, who inspired you?
Think. You're making us think. That's the hard work to do. We have to do. Okay, for our final speaker, and I cannot say enough words about our next speaker because he is. I mentioned this before. When Speakers Bureau started, the big goal of those originators to get the thing rolling was to think about the fact we never had an accredited speaker. We finally have one accredited speaker. This accredited speaker, Edwin, will be conducting a seminar with an accredited speaker, Cheryl Rouse. Some of you know her next month, that'll be August. And he is our one and only, our first ever and one and only accredited speaker. His speech topic is those three little words, Edwin Ettinghausen, Edwin Ettinghausen.
We have a timing device here today, but I brought one of my own just to make sure I did not go over time. It's right here. So that when the sand has left the top portion of the hourglass, I know my time is up. That's actually a 30-minute timer, just so you know. Tom said, Ed, you're going to be the final speaker and you can have all the time that you want. As long as you keep it between 5 and 7 minutes. I want you to think of the three most important words in the English language. The three most important words. Any volunteers? Richard.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you.
Please, thank you.
Please, thank you. Yes.
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
I am sorry.
I am sorry. Great ones. Thank you kindly.
It's on fire?
It's on fire! We'll get to that later. Thank you kindly. I think, though, there are three other words that are also important, not to diminish any of those that you came up with. I can tell you these three words, but I think it's better if you tell me these three words. And for you to come up with it, I think if I share with you a movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, I think most of you can come up with the words I'm thinking of. The movie takes place in a land far, far away, a time long, long ago. There's a young farm boy named Wesley. Wesley is in love with a farm girl named Buttercup. Now Wesley wants to ask for her hand in marriage, but he's a poor farm boy. So he takes a trip across the seas to seek his fortune. Unfortunately, his ship is captured by Dread Pirate Roberts. And as everyone knows, Dread Pirate Roberts leaves no one alive. And poor Buttercup had no future with her Wesley. 5 years later, to the day, Buttercup was engaged to Prince Humperdinck. But that day, before the wedding, someone came and kidnapped the princess and took her on this trail high above the valley below. And as she was going along that trail with her kidnapper, she said, "I hate you," and pushed him off that steep embankment. And as he went rolling down, he said 3 words. And those 3 words were,
as you wish.
As you wish. Now you might wonder, well, Ed, how are those more important than I love you? Please, thank you. It's on fire. I will share with you why I think that is the case. Now you might be wondering what's in here, and I have something very magical. You can tell it's magical because it's starting to smoke, right? Would you like to see what's in this?
Yes.
Magic treasure chest? You see, Dread Pirate Roberts, he plundered ships that had gold, silver, and jewels, but nothing was as valuable as what is in here. Let me share with you what it is. Aladdin's magic lamp. Yes, I had to go far and wide to get this from the Disney store. Now, the magic lamp is special, Aladdin's magic lamp, because when you rub it just right, a genie comes out, and genie gives you 3 wishes. And the genie only says 2 things. Your wish is my command, and as you wish. What could you accomplish if you had a genie that granted you 3 wishes? More importantly, what could you do if you had a genie that could grant you every wish that you have? Let's say, for example, off the top of my head, you're going to do some activity like give a speech. The interesting thing is the genie inside of you, in your subconscious mind, will make what you wish come true. Every command you give that genie, the genie's response is always, as you wish. Whatever your magnificent obsession, or in some cases, malignant obsession is, the genie will make it come true. The genie doesn't care about if it's good or bad, negative or positive, right or wrong. It's not the genie's job. The genie's job is to make your wish come true. So what if you had that big speech and you're thinking thoughts, a thought bubble with this thought. The genie knows that thought. She can read your mind, he or she. And what does the genie do? Grants your wish. And what happens when you give that speech?
You'll blow.
You blow that speech. On the other hand, what if your thought bubble was this? The genie reads your mind. And what does the genie do? It makes it come true, as you wish. Now, throughout history, there have been great men and women who have had a dream. And they've made that dream come true because they let the genie do the genie's job. It was 50 years ago, on July 20, 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. Now, we heard about someone's birthday celebration, but I have a different take on it. That was a celebration of someone's 7th birthday. My lovely bride was born on July 20, 1962. Don't do the math, just stick with that. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. His dream he never saw come true. But it came true because others also believed in that dream. Our president, John F. Kennedy, had a dream to take someone to the moon and back safely. And he announced that dream shortly after he was elected in 1961. He asked Wernher von Braun, the head of NASA, what will it take to get this dream, to make it happen? And he said 3 words. Simply, the will. No, actually, he didn't say those 3 words exactly. I'm paraphrasing. He said something of simply the will, Mr. President. If you want it, it will happen. Now, unfortunately, John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 20th, 1963. Do the math. 1963, November, July 20, 1969. It took nearly 6 years for that dream to come true. And when John F. Kennedy died, Wernher von Braun sent a private letter to Jacqueline Kennedy and said, I will do everything in my power to make that dream come true. And it did. So I wonder, what is your magnificent obsession, your great grand dream? Just take a moment and think about a dream that you have given up on. Now you might think, Ed, well, this sounds all good in theory, but really, come on, this genie in your head is going to help you get done what you say you want to do. Does that really happen? And how do you know what happens? It's happened for you. Well, some of you might know that I have set some world records in running. I ran over 200 marathons and 179 100-mile or longer races. And I started doing that when I was 46. How did that happen? Do I have a superhuman ability to set these records, doing things that no one else has ever done in the 100-mile race records that I've set? No. I'm a mediocre runner, really. When I run a marathon, I'm in the middle of the pack. I'm not one of the front runners that come in. But I know to let my genie do its job. Because when I say I am doing this race and I will finish, that's all I think about. I don't think about what if I don't. And my genie says, as you wish. So I want to come back to you. And what is a great dream that you've had that you've let go? I'm going to ask you to listen to your genie when she says what he says to you. As you wish. Mr. Toastmaster.
Would you ring the bell? I'm just disappointed. I never got to hear it. Go ahead and ring it. Nice and loud, you know.
Ring it for the end of the
Just so we heard it. Okay, great. It really was there, really was waiting. Thank you all. I apologize. I am sorry that we went over, and I'm going to take all the blame for it because we didn't get started on time. We might have gotten through it. We didn't have two people that could not make it. I do want to say that the inspiration for this goes back to quite a number of years ago when my wife was the chair of the Speakers Bureau, her first year, and they had a habit of going dark at Christmas. And she says, well, why not have them all, or as many as we can get, come and just introduce themselves. And it was the most successful meeting of the year, and so, well, let's try this. Like I said, I've never seen it done before, and we came pretty close to being within time. And hopefully, if you have done evaluations, you will make sure those get to the speakers that you are writing up evaluations for. I did want to thank John for our inspiration to start the meeting, and I want to thank David for helping with the camera work so that we have a record of all of this, and Mike Slattery for going to the trouble of bringing the cameras. And Jeremiah, did you have anything to inspire us with about next month? I know we're going to have a meeting of Speakers Bureau and try to, whoever wants to meet, and we can talk about the future and the plans for Speakers Bureau. And I know next month we have Cheryl Roush coming out with Ed to talk about becoming accredited speakers. So, Jeremiah?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. Thank you to everybody for coming and staying with us. What an amazing program. All the presenters, this is probably one of the best turnouts we've had here today. I really appreciate everybody spending the day with us. As Tom was saying, we have a lot of plans for Speakers Bureau this next year. We've always talked about that we want accredited speakers, and Ed took that leap and made that happen. And now we know the roadmap to be able to get there. Well, next month, we are going to be starting a whole new program. We are going to start building accredited speakers out here in this area. Ed's going to be coming along with Cheryl Roush. We're going to develop this program and really start giving opportunities for our members to be able to go out and grow. We're going to really be able to start developing that program. I've been working with Tom and Jose and the rest of our team. We're going to be developing a whole new evaluation form that's going to be based upon the accredited speakers program. We want to be able to take this program and be able to advance. We have some amazing speakers. You heard them today in here. We have Manny, who has spoken, you must speak probably 50, 60 times a year, right, Manny? All over the place. And he just goes up there and knocks it dead, but we never have an opportunity to be able to capitalize on that. But we're going to need some help with that. So we're going to be having a meeting here soon to discuss about some opportunities for leadership within Speakers Bureau. We're going to need your help to help make this program happen. So please join us. It is going to be an amazing ride. Myself and my team, the trio, we've already started working, and we have a 3-year program. And in 3 years, we want to have other people standing on that stage at International, just like Ed did, and we want them to be accredited speakers. And we want to show the people the caliber that District 12 has. Thank you so much.
Some of your help to carry part of the load, and part of one of the things that I've always thought we're not doing a good enough job and that is finding speaking opportunities for our qualified speakers. And so we may have someone trying to work at making those contacts. And so thank you all for being here. Have a happy 4th of July tomorrow. Thanks Sandy and Melinda for helping, and any of those else who set things up to help make the scene look good. And we will see you next month.